Don't lie to me like I'm stupid, William. That was the first thing Claire said when I answered my phone behind Mark Patterson's house, with smoke from the grill in my shirt and a crowd yelling at the TV inside because the US had just missed a shot in the World Cup. I had told my wife I was playing pickup soccer at Henderson Field. I was not. I was standing at a company barbecue for Mark's birthday, which had turned into a World Cup fundraiser for a youth girls soccer team in our town. I had no woman hidden in a corner, no motel room, no affair. I just wanted 3 hours where nobody asked me to leave early, nobody rolled their eyes when I laughed too loud, and nobody made me feel guilty for wanting to breathe. But Claire did not know that. And what she did not know yet was that one small lie was about to give the wrong man a weapon. My name is William Brooks. Back then, people at work knew me as the quiet guy from shipping who drove an old grey Ford, packed his lunch in the same dented cooler every day, and never talked about money. I wore faded jeans, fixed my own sink, and let people assume I was the kind of man who had to count every dollar twice. Claire believed that too. Mark's backyard was packed with folding chairs, coolers, flags, and people wearing soccer jerseys from countries they had never visited. I should have told Claire the truth, but I already knew how that would go. She would say Lily needed her nap. The house was a mess, and I was acting like a single man because I wanted to watch soccer with co-workers. So when she asked where I was going, I said I was meeting the guys at Henderson Field. That was the lie. Not a good one. Not a smart one. Not even a useful one. Just the one that opened the door. When my phone rang 40 minutes later, I stepped away from the grill and pressed it to my ear. Claire did not say hello. She asked if I was really at the field. I forced a laugh and said yes, of course, where else would I be? There was a pause behind her breathing, and in that pause I heard cars passing. Not our house, not her mother's kitchen, somewhere outside. Then she said, "Funny, because I'm looking at the field right now." My stomach dropped so hard I had to put one hand on the fence. I told her the truth then. I said Mark had a birthday barbecue. The whole team was there. The fundraiser was happening, and I had only lied because I thought she would be upset if I came. The sentence sounded pathetic even to me. Claire did not yell. That was worse. She said, "So you planned the lie?" I tried to answer, but she cut me off and said, "Do not come home looking for sympathy. I'm taking Lily to my mother's." Then she hung up. That was not anger. That was a decision. I stayed at the party for maybe 10 more minutes, but I did not taste the food after that. Mark asked if I was okay. I lied again and said I was fine. That was the thing about lies. Once one left your mouth, the next one came easier, and each one made you smaller. I was walking toward my truck when my phone rang again. It was Claire's mother, Susan Harper. She asked what I had done. I told her it was not what Claire thought. Susan sighed and said Claire had shown up at her house furious, dropped Lily off with a backpack, and left. When I asked left where, Susan said she was meeting friends downtown. She was too upset to stay here. Downtown. During a World Cup Saturday. With the bars full, the streets loud, and every excuse in the world for someone to disappear. I drove to Susan's house with my hands locked around the wheel. I hated myself for giving Claire a reason to do something reckless. I also hated the small voice in my head asking why she had gone out instead of confronting me. That question would not leave. When I got there, Lily was in the living room watching cartoons with a juice box in both hands. She looked up at me and asked why Mommy was mad. I wanted to say because Daddy was stupid. Instead, I kissed her head and said, grown-ups sometimes made messes they had to clean up. Susan stood by the hallway with her arms crossed. She asked where I had really been, and I told her. I even offered to call Mark right there. She did not want proof. She wanted shame. She said, a man with a family should not need to sneak around like a teenager. I took it because I deserved part of it, but not all of it. I waited in Susan's living room until after midnight. Lily fell asleep against my leg. At 12:37, headlights moved across the curtains. Claire came in wearing jeans, boots, and a black blouse I had not seen in months. Her makeup was still perfect, but her eyes were hard. She saw me sitting there and did not look surprised. I asked where she had been. She smiled without warmth and said she had been out learning how freedom felt. That was the first cruel sentence. I told her I had made one dumb mistake. but she had left our daughter and vanished for hours. She said, "Do not use Lily to make yourself look like the responsible one. You lied first." Susan appeared in the hallway in her robe. Claire looked from her mother to me and said louder, "If William gets to do whatever he wants and call it harmless, then I guess I do too." I said I had not done anything with another woman. I told her to call Mark, call anyone, ask every person at that barbecue. Claire shrugged and said, "I do not need your warehouse buddies covering for you." Warehouse buddies. She said it like the people I worked with were beneath her, and because I worked with them, I was beneath her too. That was the first time I saw the new Claire clearly. She was not just hurt, she was enjoying the higher ground. The next morning I went back to Susan's with coffee, muffins, and the kind of apology a man gives when he is scared his family is slipping away. I said I was sorry for lying. I said she had every right to be angry. I said I would never do it again. Claire listened with Lily on her lap, then asked if I wanted applause for finally telling the truth after getting caught. I swallowed that too. On Wednesday, she said she was going to a World Cup watch party with the girls. She did not tell me which girls. She left Lily with me and walked out in a white US jersey tied at the waist. When I asked where she would be, she said, "Probably somewhere you can't afford." I laughed once because I thought she was joking. She was not. That sentence did more than hurt me. It showed me who had been whispering in her ear. Claire had never cared that much about money when we first met. She knew I drove an old truck and packed lunches. But after that first night out, her insults changed. They got cleaner, meaner, more specific. Broke, small, predictable, safe. Words do not appear in a marriage by accident. Somebody brings them in. The first name I heard was Wade Collins. He came up on Friday when Lily repeated something at breakfast that made my hand freeze over the cereal box. She asked if Daddy was going to live in the little house if Mommy found a better one. I asked her where she had heard that. She looked scared immediately, the way kids do when they realize they have carried adult words into the wrong room. She said Mommy's friend Wade said Mommy deserved a better life. A man I barely knew had said my wife deserved better, and my daughter had heard it. That was not gossip, that was positioning. When I confronted Claire that night, she acted bored. She said Wade was helping organize the fundraiser for Lily's future soccer league. I reminded her Lily was 4 and had never asked to play soccer. Claire said, maybe she would if her father cared about anything bigger than overtime. I told her not to bring another man into our family problems. She turned from the mirror, holding one earring, and said, "Another man? You mean someone who actually listens?" I did not yell. Lily was in the next room arranging stuffed animals on her bed, so I said carefully that I would talk about my mistake all night if she wanted, but I would not let Wade Collins become a voice in our marriage. Claire smiled and clipped on the earring. "Then stop acting so replaceable." That was the second cruel sentence, and it landed in a place she knew was already bruised. I almost told her everything then. I almost told her why I worked in shipping when I did not have to. I almost told her why my old truck was still in my name, even though I could have bought a new one cash. I almost told her about the property documents locked in the fireproof box under my workbench, the ones connected to 3 downtown units, including the building Wade kept bragging about like it was his kingdom. But I did not. My father had taught me that money revealed people faster than hardship did. When he died, he left me more than anyone knew, but he also left me instructions through our family attorney. Keep your life simple. Watch who respects you when they think you have nothing. Never use money to win an argument unless the truth has already lost every other way. I thought silence was restraint. Wade thought silence was weakness. The first public humiliation happened the next Saturday at Collins' sports bar. Claire said Susan had convinced her we needed to restart in public. There was a World Cup charity event that afternoon. Families were bringing kids, Mark's company was donating a raffle basket, and Claire said if my barbecue story was true, then I should not be afraid to show my face around those same people. I knew it was a trap, but I went because Lily wanted to see the flags. The bar was packed before noon. Red, white, and blue banners hung from the ceiling. Kids had face paint on their cheeks. A long table near the patio had donation jars, raffle sheets, and a framed sign that said, "Kicks for Kids World Cup Drive." Wade Collins stood behind that table like he owned not just the bar, but every person inside it. When Claire walked in, he hugged her with one arm and kept the other hand on Lily's shoulder, just long enough for me to notice. Then he looked at me. "So, this is William," he said. "The soccer player without grass stains." People nearby laughed because they thought it was harmless. Claire did not laugh, but she did not stop it either. That silence did more damage than the joke. I held out my hand. Wade looked at it for half a second before shaking it like he was doing charity. He said he had heard a lot about me. I told him I hoped most of it was accurate. He leaned closer and said, low enough that only I could hear, "Accuracy is not really your strong suit, right?" My fingers tightened around Lily's juice cup. When the raffle started, Wade grabbed the microphone and thanked the real supporters who showed up for the kids. Then he made a joke about how some dads claim to love soccer until it was time to actually show up at the field. A few people chuckled. Mark, standing near the bar, looked over at me and stopped smiling. Claire's face tightened, but she kept her eyes on the stage area. Wade continued, saying, "We all know the type. Big promises, empty cleats." That was not a joke anymore. That was a public label. I felt people looking at me, some confused, some entertained, some hungry for the drama they could smell but did not understand. Lily tugged my hand and asked why the man was talking about shoes. I bent down and told her he was just being silly, but my chest had gone cold. Then Wade called Claire up to draw the raffle ticket. She hesitated, but he waved her over, smiling like he was rescuing her from a small life. She walked up and the photographer raised his camera. Click. That sound hit me harder than the joke, because on the donation table, half hidden under a stack of flyers, I saw a printed sponsor packet with Claire's name on it. Not just Claire Brooks. Claire Harper Brooks, listed under Community Outreach Lead. Under it was Lily's photo from last spring, the one Claire had taken in our backyard, with a caption about building a better future for local girls. I had never approved that picture. I had never heard of that title. And my daughter's face was sitting on Wade Collins's table, helping him collect money. That was when the room stopped being loud for me. I stepped closer and picked up one of the flyers. Wade saw me do it. His smile changed for less than a second, but I caught it. Claire came down from the front, saw the flyer in my hand and said, "Do not start." I asked why Lily's picture was on fundraising material. Claire said it was for a good cause. I asked why her name was on Wade's sponsor packet. She said somebody had to help because some people actually cared about the community. I said, "Our daughter is not a prop." Wade appeared beside us before Claire could answer. He kept his voice friendly for the crowd, but his eyes were flat. He said, "Relax, William. It is just a flyer. Most fathers would be proud." I told him most fathers were asked first. His smile hardened. Most fathers are present enough to be asked. Claire whispered his name, warning him but not defending me. I looked at her and something in me changed. Not broke, changed. There is a difference. Breaking makes noise. Changing gets quiet. I folded the flyer once and put it in my back pocket. Wade noticed. He said, "You keeping a souvenir?" I said, "Something like that." For the first time that afternoon, he stopped smiling. That night, Claire did not come home. She texted me at 10:14 saying she was staying at Susan's with Lily because I had embarrassed her at the fundraiser. I was standing in Lily's bedroom when the message came through, looking at the empty spot on her dresser where her favorite stuffed rabbit usually sat. Claire had taken it. It was small, but it told me she was not just angry for the night. She was preparing distance. At 10:39, Susan called. She said Claire was devastated and I needed to give her space. I asked if Lily was asleep. Susan said yes. I asked to say goodnight anyway. Susan hesitated too long, then told me it was not a good idea. That was the first time anyone kept me from my daughter. I drove to Susan's house and parked across the street, not because I wanted a scene, but because I needed to see that Lily was there. The porch light was on. Claire's car was in the driveway, Susan's curtains were closed, and Wade's black SUV was parked 2 houses down. I sat there with my headlights off, staring at it. Maybe he had a reason. Maybe he knew someone on that street. Maybe I was letting jealousy make a fool out of me. I told myself all of that because I did not want to become the kind of man who saw betrayal in every shadow. Then Wade stepped out of Susan's side gate. He was carrying a manila envelope. He walked to his SUV without rushing, got in and drove away. I did not follow him. I did not chase, scream, threaten, or pound on Susan's door. I sat there until my hands stopped shaking. Then I took one picture of his license plate and drove home. The next morning, I called our family attorney, David Klein. David had handled my father's estate. He was also the only person besides me who knew the full structure of the property trust. He answered on the second ring and called me by my full name, which he only did when he knew something was wrong. I asked him if Colin's sports bar was still behind on rent. He went quiet. Then he said, "Why are you asking now?" I told him Wade Collins had put my daughter's picture on fundraising materials without my permission. I told him he had been around my wife, around my mother-in-law's house, and around some envelope I did not understand. David sighed once. "William, you need to come in Monday morning." I asked why. He said, "Because Wade's attorney requested a lease modification last week. They want an extension, reduced penalties, and permission to use the property for seasonal fundraising events." I sat down at the kitchen table. I asked David who signed the request. He said Wade had signed it, along with a proposed community partner. I already knew the answer before I asked. David said the name anyway. Claire Harper Brooks. That was not a mistake. That was a move. By noon, my marriage had become something else. Claire was not answering my calls. Susan sent one cold message telling me not to pressure her daughter. Mark texted me a photo from the fundraiser that someone had posted online. In it, Wade stood beside Claire and Lily under the World Cup banners, smiling like a family man. I was in the background, half cut out of the frame, holding a juice cup and looking like somebody who had wandered into the wrong life. The caption said, "Building a better future with the people who show up." I read it 3 times. Then I zoomed in. Behind Wade, taped to the donation table, was a small sign I had missed at the bar. It listed the fundraiser's official beneficiary account. I knew that account name because it belonged to the same non-profit Wade had used 2 years earlier when my father's trust rejected his first request to buy the building. I opened the old trust folder from the fireproof box under my workbench. My hands were steady now. That scared me more than the shaking had. There were leases, notices, tax records, and 3 letters Wade had sent before my father died. In one of them, Wade had called the downtown units underused properties held by passive owners. Passive owners. That was what he thought we were. That was what he thought I was. I spent Sunday reading documents I had not touched in years. I found the original lease, the late payment notices, and the section that gave the property owner audit rights over charity events held on the premises when the property name or images of minors were used in promotion. Images of minors. I pulled the flyer from my pocket and laid it beside the lease. Lily's smiling face looked back at me from a piece of paper Wade had used without asking me. That was when guilt stopped being the largest thing in the room. I had lied to my wife about a barbecue. I would carry that. But Wade had stepped into that crack and started widening it with both hands. He was not helping Claire. He was using her name, my daughter's picture, and my marriage to protect his business. On Monday morning, I walked into David Klein's office, wearing my work boots and a plain blue shirt with a grease mark near the cuff. His receptionist looked at me the way people looked at men like me in nice offices, polite, but already finished deciding where I belonged. David came out himself. He took me into the conference room and spread the documents across the table. The lease modification, the fundraiser paperwork, the non-profit account, the photo release Claire had signed for Lily. My stomach turned when I saw that last page because the father's signature line was not empty. Someone had signed my name. Not well, not even close. David looked at me over his glasses and said, "Tell me you did not sign this." I said I did not. He slid another page toward me. It was a copy of Wade's proposed agreement, asking the property trust to recognize Claire as a community liaison for the Collins World Cup fundraising series. In exchange, Wade wanted reduced rent through the tournament season and public use rights for the patio. My wife's anger had become paperwork. My daughter's face had become leverage, and my name had become a forgery. For 2 weeks I had been begging Claire to believe me. I had been apologizing like the whole disaster began and ended with my lie. But someone had taken my silence, dressed it up as guilt, and used it to move money. David asked what I wanted to do. For a second I saw Claire crying in Susan's kitchen. I saw Lily asking why Mommy was mad. I saw Wade's hand on that microphone, his little smile when the crowd laughed. I heard him say most fathers would be proud. Then I looked at the forged signature again. I said, "Do not contact Wade yet." David leaned back slowly. I said, "I want the audit. I want the camera footage preserved. I want every payment record tied to that fundraiser. And I want Claire to have one chance to tell me the truth before she finds out what is still in my name." David nodded, but his face changed. He had known my father for 20 years. He understood what I was really saying. The quiet part was over. I left his office at 11:26 and found Claire waiting beside my truck. She looked nervous for the first time since the lie at Mark's barbecue. Not angry, nervous. She asked why I was meeting with David Klein. I asked how she knew I was there. Claire looked away. That tiny movement answered more than she meant it to. Before I could say anything else, a text came through on her phone. She glanced down, and I saw Wade's name flash across the screen. "Do not let him scare you, he is bluffing." Claire locked the phone too late. I looked at her, then at the building behind me, then back at her face. For the first time in our marriage, I stopped trying to explain myself. I said, "Claire, who told you I was bluffing?" She opened her mouth, but no answer came out, and that was when I knew she had no idea what Wade had dragged her into. Claire stood beside my truck with her phone clutched against her chest, and for a few seconds the only sound between us was traffic moving past David Klein's office. I asked her again who told her I was bluffing. She tried to look offended, but fear had already ruined it. She said Wade knew how men like me used paperwork to scare women back into marriages. I stared at her because for the first time I realized she was not just angry at me. She had been coached. That did not make her innocent. It made everything more dangerous. I asked if Wade had shown her any papers. She said he had explained enough. She said I had hidden money, my father's estate, and the fact that I was not as helpless as I acted. Wade had given her half of the truth and aimed it at me like a knife. Claire said, "So you were lying about more than the barbecue?" I said, "There is a difference between privacy and forgery." Her face changed. That word did what my apologies never could. It made her listen. I asked if she had signed my name on Lily's photo release. Claire looked genuinely confused. She said she had signed her own name and Wade told her the father's approval was not necessary. I showed her the document David had scanned for me. My name was on the father's signature line in a sloppy hand that looked copied from an old Christmas card. Claire went pale. She whispered that she had not done that. I believed her. Not because I wanted to, but because I had lived with Claire long enough to know the difference between her anger and her shock. Then her phone buzzed again. Wade. She did not answer. That was the first crack in his control. I told her to stay away from him until I knew how deep this went. She snapped back that I did not get to tell her what to do. I said I was asking as Lily's father. Wade had used our daughter's image, put her name near money, and placed my forged signature under it. That finally reached her. She asked what was going to happen. I said, "That depends on who keeps lying." The silence after that did not feel like the end of a fight. It felt like the start of a much larger one. Claire left without hugging me, without apologizing, without saying she believed me. But she did one thing that mattered. She forwarded me every message Wade had sent her about the fundraiser. Not all at once, not proudly. She sent them one by one that night, like each screenshot cost her something. By midnight, my kitchen table was covered with printed pages. Wade had started small. He complimented Claire, told her she had a natural way with people, then fed her resentment. He said men who lied about small things usually hid bigger things. He said I was insecure because I could not provide the future she deserved. Then came the money. He told her the World Cup fundraiser could become a permanent youth soccer foundation. He said Claire could run community outreach, He said there might even be a paid role once the lease extension was approved. A paid role. That was how he turned anger into ambition. He did not just flirt with her. He gave her a door and told her I was the wall. David sent a preservation letter to Wade, the non-profit board, the bar's accountant, and the payment processor. He demanded records, footage, flyers, release forms, deposit logs, and all communication involving Lily's image, Claire's name, and the lease modification. Wade called me 9 minutes after the letter went out. I let it ring. He called again. I let it ring again. Then he texted, "You have no idea what you are doing." I took a screenshot. That was the problem with men like Wade. They thought intimidation was private until someone started collecting it. At work, Mark pulled me aside near the loading dock and asked if this involved the fundraiser. Wade had been asking around about me, mostly about my job, my overtime, my money, and whether Claire had complained about me. My jaw tightened. Mark said, "He wanted people to think you were unstable." That was the third attack. The first was humiliation. The second was paperwork. The third was reputation. I asked Mark to write it down. He did not hesitate. He said he had laughed at Wade's first joke at the bar and had felt bad since. "I thought it was awkward marriage stuff," he said. "I did not know he was setting you up." Neither did I. By Friday, David had enough to request an emergency trust review. The voting control was simple. Me, David as trustee counsel, and my Aunt Patricia, who had no patience for foolish men in shiny shoes. Patricia joined by video from Phoenix. She listened while David explained the forged signature, the unauthorized use of Lily's photo, the lease request, and the irregular donation account. Then she asked one question. "Is Collins still renting month to month under the penalty clause?" David said yes. Patricia looked at me through the screen, then stopped letting him stand in your building like he owns it. There it was, the sentence I had been avoiding. Collins Sports Bar was not Wade's castle. It was my father's old building, held under my trust, leased to Wade after his first restaurant failed. He had spent years letting people believe he owned that corner. Now it made all the difference in the world. David prepared a notice of default based on unpaid rent, unauthorized property use, potential fraud, and breach of lease. He advised me not to serve it quietly. Wade's public power came from public image. Behind closed doors, he would make himself the victim before people saw what he had done. That same afternoon, Wade announced the final World Cup fundraiser party online. Big screen, family event, raffle drawing, local sponsors, community leaders, a check presentation for the youth girls' soccer program, and Claire's name was still on the graphic. I called Claire. She answered on the fourth ring, guarded and tired. I asked if she had approved the new poster. She said no. I sent it to her. I heard her breath catch through the phone. Wade had listed her as co-chair. He had listed Lily as our little ambassador. Our, not mine, not Claire's. Our. Claire said very quietly. I told him not to use her again. I said, "Then you need to decide where you stand before Saturday." She said she did not know what that meant. I told her the truth was coming out at the event, with or without her. She got angry because anger was easier than shame. She said I was trying to destroy her. I said Wade had put her in front of everyone and I was giving her a chance to step away before the lights turned on. She hung up. But 2 hours later, she sent me one more screenshot. It was a message from Wade. "If William keeps pushing, I will make sure everyone knows he is using Lily to punish you. Stay close to me Saturday. Smile. Let me handle him." I read that message 3 times. He was not hiding anymore. He thought the leash was already tight. Saturday arrived hot, loud, and bright. The whole town seemed downtown because the US was playing, and every bar had flags in the windows. Collins Sports Bar had a line outside before noon. Kids ran around with painted cheeks. Donation jars glittered on the tables like nothing dirty could ever happen near them. I parked 2 blocks away and sat in my truck until my breathing slowed. I was not dressed for revenge. I wore the same old work boots, jeans, and a plain shirt. I wanted Wade to see exactly what he expected to see. The poor husband, the embarrassed warehouse guy, the man he thought he had already beaten. That was his last comfort. David met me near the back entrance with a folder under his arm. Patricia had flown in that morning and stood beside him in dark sunglasses, looking like she had come to close a bank. Mark was there too. Behind them were a forensic accountant and an off-duty officer working event security. David asked if I was sure. I looked through the window and saw Wade at the front of the room with Claire beside him. Lily was not there. Thank God. I said, "Where is my daughter?" Claire saw me through the glass at that exact second. Her face changed and she stepped away from Wade. She came out the side door before I could enter. She said Lily was with Susan. She had refused to bring her. For the first time in weeks, Claire had protected our daughter from the stage. It did not erase what she had done, but it mattered. I asked if she was ready to tell the truth. Her eyes filled, but she shook her head once. She said, "I do not know how much of this is my fault." I said, "Then say only what is true." Inside, Wade took the microphone. The crowd quieted. The game was about to start, but Wade knew how to work a room. He thanked the community. He thanked the sponsors. He thanked the mothers who cared enough to build something better for their daughters. Then he looked straight at me as I entered. "And I want to thank the people who actually show up," he said, smiling, "because kids remember who is present." The crowd clapped. I walked farther in. Wade's smile widened. He thought I had come to lose control. He wanted me angry, loud, sloppy. He wanted the warehouse husband to make a scene under the flags. He said, "William, good of you to join us. You find the right field this time." The room laughed again. Not everyone, but enough. My face burned, but I kept walking. Claire stood near the sponsor table, frozen. Mark moved closer to the bar. David and Patricia stayed behind me. Wade saw them and hesitated, but only for a second. He lifted the microphone again. "We are all about accountability here." That was the mistake. I said, loud enough for the front tables to hear, "Good. Then let's start with the rent." The laughter died in pieces. Wade blinked. "Excuse me." I kept my voice even. "You are 7 months behind on rent, Wade. 9 if we count penalty periods." A few people turned toward the bar manager. Someone whispered, "Rent?" Wade laughed once into the microphone. "Folks, this is what I mean about unstable." I took one step forward. "You also requested a lease modification using my wife's name, without disclosing that you were already in default." His face hardened. "You do not own anything here." I looked at David. David opened the folder and handed me the notice. I did not wave it around. I held it calmly because calm was what Wade had not prepared for. I said, "Collins Sports Bar operates in a building owned by the Brooks Family Property Trust. I am the primary beneficiary and voting control holder of that trust. My father leased this space to you. I allowed the lease to continue." The room went completely still. That was the reveal. Not shouted, not decorated, just placed in the air where everyone could see it. Wade's mouth opened slightly, then closed. His eyes moved from me to David, then to Patricia, then back to me. For the first time since I had met him, he looked smaller than his clothes. Claire covered her mouth with one hand. She knew I had inherited something from my father. She had not known this. She had not known Wade's stage, his bar, his image, his little kingdom, stood on ground controlled by the man he had been calling broke. The power moved so fast you could feel it. People turned toward me, then toward Wade, then toward the donation table with the flyers, jars, and posters. The room did not know everything yet, but it knew enough to stop clapping. Wade tried to recover. He said, "This is a family dispute. William is bitter because his wife finally got tired of being lied to." That hit because part of it was true. I had lied. He knew that truth gave his lie a place to stand. So I answered it before he could use it again. I said, "I lied to my wife about going to a barbecue. I was wrong. I apologized for that, and I will answer for that at home. But you used my mistake to get access to her, my daughter's image, and this property." Wade pointed at me. "Careful." I said, "No, you be careful." David handed copies to the event security officer and the radio host, who had quietly lowered his microphone but not turned it off. Patricia walked to the donation table and placed a second packet in front of the accountant. I continued. "A photo release for my 4-year-old daughter contains my forged signature." Fundraiser materials list my wife in a role she says she did not approve. The beneficiary account tied to today's event is under review, and as of this moment, the trust is issuing formal notice of default. A woman near the front gasped. The bar manager stepped away from Wade. Wade's voice dropped. "You are making a mistake." I said, "No, I made my mistake weeks ago. This is yours." That was the moment the room turned on him. Not with shouting, not yet, with silence. The kind of silence that tells a man his performance no longer owns the audience. Then Claire moved. She walked to the front, took the microphone from Wade's hand, and he was too shocked to stop her. Her hand shook so badly, the mic brushed her bracelet. She looked at the crowd, then at me. She said Wade had told her the releases were standard. He told her I was hiding money to control her. He promised the fundraiser would give her work of her own. She admitted anger had made her careless. She admitted she had allowed Lily's photo once, but had never signed my name and had told Wade not to use Lily again. Wade stepped toward her and hissed, "Claire, stop." She turned to him and said, into the microphone, "No, you stop." The crowd heard every word. That was the second reversal. He had used her as proof of his goodness. Now she was standing in front of everyone as proof of his manipulation. Wade lunged for the microphone, but the security officer stepped between them. Wade tried to laugh it off. He said documents could be misunderstood, and William had obviously been planning this because rich men loved humiliating people who worked hard. Patricia removed her sunglasses. She said, "Sir, you have been paying below market rent for 6 years." Someone near the back actually laughed, but not with Wade this time. Then the accountant found the first visible problem. He lifted one deposit sheet from the table and asked Wade why the cash donations from the last fundraiser had been deposited 3 days late and short by more than $2,000 compared with the receipt log. That was when Wade's bartender, Kyle, turned gray. I had barely noticed him before that moment. He stood behind the bar with a towel in his hand, staring at the papers like they had started speaking his name. David noticed too. He asked Kyle if he had handled the cash box. Kyle said nothing. Wade shouted at him not to answer questions without a lawyer. The room erupted. Parents moved closer to the donation table. One mother demanded to know if the kids' money was missing. Another asked if her check was safe. The radio host quietly stepped outside and made a call. Mark stood by the door, blocking nobody, but watching everything. Wade's kingdom was collapsing, one witness at a time. Then Kyle broke. He said Wade told him to hold back part of the cash for event expenses. Wade yelled that he was lying. Kyle said he had texts. Wade called him an idiot. That word did what all the documents had not done. It made Kyle angry enough to reach for his phone. Within minutes, the off-duty officer had called police because the event involved a forged signature, a minor's image, disputed charitable funds, and possible fraud. I did not say much after that. I did not need to. For weeks, Wade had made himself the loudest man in every room. Now every sound made him smaller. When the police arrived, Wade tried to walk out through the kitchen. Mark saw him move and called out. The officer intercepted him near the hallway. Wade said he was leaving his own business. I said from across the room, "You are leaving a leased property under default review." He looked at me with pure hatred, but hatred was all he had left. The officers did not drag him out dramatically. Real life is colder than movies. They took statements, reviewed documents, and asked Wade to come with them because too many issues connected him to the forged release and donation money. Kyle went too, with the look of a man who had followed the wrong person into the wrong crime. Wade's last attempt was Claire. He turned to her and said, "Tell them he put you up to this." Claire looked at him for a long second. Then she said, "You used me because I was angry." He said, "I helped you." She shook her head. "No, you studied where I was weak." That sentence took the last air out of him. By sunset, Colin's sports bar was closed. The flags still hung from the ceiling. The giant TV still showed post-game analysis nobody was watching. The donation jars were sealed as evidence. Before the night ended, the youth soccer board froze the funds and removed Wade from all involvement pending investigation. David told me the legal process would take time. Fraud did not become punishment in one afternoon. Eviction did not happen because a room gasped, but the public mask was gone, and that mattered. Wade had lost the one thing he had been using to control everyone: believability. Claire and I stood near my truck while the sky turned orange behind the downtown roofs. She looked exhausted, stripped down to the woman I had married and the woman who had hurt me. She said she was sorry. I did not answer right away. She said she was sorry for using Lily, for letting Wade close, for calling me replaceable, for letting people laugh at me. Then she said she did not know how to forgive me for lying or how to ask me to forgive what came after. That was the first honest thing either of us had said in weeks. I told her I had given her the match, but she had chosen where to throw it. She cried then, quietly. No performance. No collapsing into my arms. Just tears she could not control anymore. I wanted to hold her. I also wanted to step back. Both feelings were true, and neither one fixed anything. So I said the only thing I could say. We start with Lily, not us. Claire nodded like that hurt, but she accepted it. That night I went to Susan's house to pick up my daughter. Susan opened the door with red eyes. She did not apologize at first. But when Lily ran to me in pajamas and wrapped herself around my legs, Susan looked at the floor and said, "I should have asked more questions." I said, "Yes, you should have." She flinched, but I was done softening the truth for people who had helped carry lies. Lily asked if Mommy was coming home. I looked at Claire, who stood behind Susan with her arms folded tightly around herself. Then I told my daughter Mommy and Daddy both loved her, and tonight she was coming with me. Claire did not fight it. That was how I knew something had truly changed. The investigation unfolded over the next month. Wade was charged after the forged signature and donation discrepancies were documented. Kyle cooperated and admitted he had helped skim cash under Wade's instructions, calling it temporary and harmless. The youth soccer funds were recovered through frozen accounts and pressure from Wade's investors. The bar never reopened under his name. The trust terminated the lease after legal notice and later leased the building to a family restaurant run by a woman my father had once helped with a small business loan. Claire and I did not magically heal. That would be a lie, and I had already paid enough for one of those. She moved back after 3 months, not into our bedroom, but into the guest room while we worked through counseling, custody, anger, shame, and the truths we had avoided. The following summer, Lily joined a soccer team, not Wade's program. A normal one with orange cones, grass stains, and kids who forgot which goal was theirs. Claire and I stood on the sideline together, not touching, but not fighting. When Lily scored by accident, she turned to see if we had watched. We had. That was the life I wanted back. Not the old one exactly. The old one had cracks we had both ignored. I wanted a truer one, even if it was harder. After the game, Lily ran to me and asked if I saw her goal. I lifted her up and said I would remember it forever. Claire stood beside us with tears in her eyes, and for once, she did not look like she was trying to win anything. She looked grateful to still be there. A few weeks later, we passed the old Collins building downtown. The new restaurant had bright windows, clean tables, and a small sign in the corner that said, Brooks Property Trust. Claire noticed it and looked at me. She said, "You really could have destroyed him sooner." I thought about Wade laughing into that microphone, my daughter's face on that flyer, and my own lie, small at first, then huge because it landed in the hands of someone waiting to use it. I said, "I did not want to destroy anyone. I wanted the truth to have witnesses." Claire nodded. Then she reached for my hand. I did not know yet if we would make it all the way back, but I knew this. I was no longer begging to be believed by people who needed me weak. They thought I had nothing because I stayed quiet. They forgot silence can also mean a man is keeping records. And when the truth finally stood up in that room, it did not have to shout. It already owned the building. What would you do in this situation? Be honest, or did this remind you of someone? Tell me in the comments. And if this made you think about your own relationship, I left something in the description that can help you build something stronger. Subscribe if you want more stories like this every day, and share this with someone who needs to hear this story.